The timer hadn't even started, and they were already laughing. Not quiet laughter. Not polite academy murmurs. Open, echoing, arena-filling laughter. 70 cadets stood in the galactic martial atrium, armored limbs folded, multi-jointed tails twitching, mandibles clicking in amusement. Above them, the combat drones hummed softly, recording everything for council archives. In the center of the polished black floor stood the smallest figure in the room. No armor plates. No exoskeleton. No reinforced dermal scales. Just a 16-year-old human in a simple academy uniform. His name was Ethan Cole. And according to every statistic displayed on the floating holographic board above him, he was the weakest student in the class. Transfer from Earth, one cadet muttered, flexing 4 upper limbs. That low-gravity garden world. Death world classification barely level 8, another scoffed. And they call themselves predators. Ethan adjusted the wrap around his wrist calmly. His breathing was steady. Inhale. Exhale. No reaction. At the far end of the atrium, Instructor Verith stepped forward. 8 feet tall. Dense muscle fibers coiled beneath armored skin. A veteran of 3 border conflicts. His voice silenced the room instantly. Today is the graduation trial. The holographic board shifted. Objective: survive 60 seconds against senior combat unit. Murmurs rippled again. Senior combat units were not students. They were ranked upper-tier cadets, trained for interstellar peacekeeping enforcement. No first year had ever lasted the full 60 seconds. Instructor Verith's gaze shifted to Ethan. Transfer Cadet Cole, he said, voice unreadable. You will test first. Laughter erupted again. Ethan stepped forward without hesitation. Across from him, 3 senior cadets entered the arena. Species: Carthan Warbreed. Height: over 7 feet each. Natural armor density: 340% above galactic average. Strike force rating: classified. One of them rolled his shoulders slowly. We'll keep it gentle, human. The audience snickered. Above them, the timer flickered to life, waiting for activation. Instructor Verith raised one massive arm. Engagement begins on my mark. Ethan closed his eyes for half a second. Inhale. Exhale. When he opened them again, there was no fear there. Only calculation. The instructor's arm dropped. Begin. The timer started. 60. 59. 58. The first Carthan lunged immediately, all brute acceleration and mass. The floor cracked under the impact of his launch. Gasps. The human didn't retreat. He stepped forward. Not back. Forward. 57. The second senior swung wide, aiming to pin. The third circled to flank. Textbook suppression tactic. Ethan moved once. It looked almost lazy. Almost casual. But the first Carthan's momentum twisted sideways instead of forward. A sharp crack echoed. Not bone. Flaw. The armored cadet hit the ground face first. 56. Silence began to replace laughter. The second cadet roared and grabbed for Ethan's shoulder. The human dropped his weight, pivoted under the grasp, and the senior's own elbow hyperextended against nothing. He fell. 55. The third hesitated. Just for a fraction. That was enough. Ethan closed distance in 2 precise steps. A palm strike to the center of balance. A sweep. A controlled descent. The third senior hit the floor flat on his back. 54. No one moved. The 3 Carthans attempted to rise. None could. Not unconscious. Not severely injured. But immobilized. Locked in angles their own anatomy didn't allow escape from. Ethan stood in the center of them, breathing steady. 53. 52. The timer continued counting. Instructor Verith stared at the scene. The AI drones began replay capture automatically. Analysis windows opened mid-air. Combat efficiency, 97%. Energy expenditure, minimal. Movement waste, near zero. The arena was completely silent now. At 47 seconds, Instructor Verith raised his hand. Stop. The timer froze. 0:47 remaining. 13 seconds had passed. 13 seconds. 3 senior combat cadets were on the ground. And the weakest student in the academy stood untouched. Ethan stepped back immediately, releasing the joint locks with careful precision. No gloating. No taunting. He even offered a hand to help one of them up. The Carthan stared at him. Confused. Not angry. Confused. Instructor Verith descended into the arena slowly. He circled Ethan once. You have prior training, the instructor stated. Ethan nodded once. Yes, sir. In what discipline? The human hesitated just slightly. Several. A ripple of unease moved through the watching cadets. The holographic board recalculated. Under Academy rules, any cadet who defeats 3 ranked seniors simultaneously in official trial conditions qualifies for automatic black belt classification. The board flickered. Processing. Processing. A soft chime echoed across the chamber. Status updated. Cadet Ethan Cole, black belt rank granted. No applause followed. Only stunned silence. One cadet finally whispered what everyone was thinking. How? Ethan adjusted the wrap on his wrist again. Calm. Controlled. Unshaken. You train to overpower, he said quietly. His eyes scanned the arena. We train to end. Above them, in the observation balcony, a silent transmission was already being sent beyond the Academy walls. Destination, Galactic Combat Council. Attached file. Human, close quarters engagement footage. And somewhere far above the Academy, someone important pressed replay. The laughter didn't return. It couldn't. The replay began instead. Above the atrium floor, holographic projections expanded midair. 3-dimensional renderings of the fight froze at the exact moment the first Carthan had lunged. Instructor Verith didn't speak. He didn't need to. The Academy AI slowed the footage to 20% speed. And that's when the room understood something terrifying. Ethan hadn't reacted late. He had reacted first. Frame by frame, the projection zoomed in. The first Carthan's muscles flexed before launch. A fractional shift in shoulder alignment. A tightening in the lower spine. Before the armored cadet even moved, Ethan had already adjusted his footing. He predicted it, someone whispered. No, Instructor Verith corrected quietly. He read it. The projection resumed. The massive Carthan surged forward. The floor fractured beneath his acceleration. But Ethan didn't retreat. He stepped diagonally inside the line of force. One hand touched the attacker's forearm, not to block, but to redirect. Momentum folded sideways. The Carthan's center of gravity shifted just beyond recovery. His own weight finished the throw. The frame paused again. Combat analysis windows opened beside it. Force applied by human, 12%. Force redirected from opponent, 88%. A murmur spread. He used his mass against him. He didn't even strike. Instructor Verith's gaze sharpened. Continue. The second senior cadet charged simultaneously from the flank. Now the projection zoomed into Ethan's breathing pattern. Inhale. Step. Exhale. Drop of body weight. The Carthan's grip missed by less than 2 centimeters. Ethan rotated beneath the extended limb, positioning his hips under the elbow joint. There was no dramatic movement. No explosive counterattack. Just leverage. The joint locked at an angle nature never intended. The senior collapsed under his own anatomy. The projection froze again. Energy output, minimal. Movement efficiency, optimal. The third cadet's hesitation was magnified next. Just 0.4 seconds of pause. But to someone trained, it was an opening the size of a canyon. Ethan advanced before the hesitation ended. Palm strike, not to injure. To disrupt balance. A sweep to the ray leg. Controlled descent. The third cadet landed flat, air expelled, disoriented but unharmed. And then, the final frame. All 3 immobilized. 13 seconds. Silence filled the atrium again as the projection ended. Instructor Verith turned slowly toward Ethan, who still stood at attention in the center of the arena floor. You were not taught this here, the instructor stated. No, sir. Where? Earth. The word carried differently now. No one laughed this time. A cadet from the upper rows stepped forward hesitantly. What discipline is that? Ethan considered the question. Several, he answered again. Jiu-jitsu. Wrestling. Boxing. Muay Thai. A few others. The names meant nothing to most of them. But the combat AI was already cross-referencing Earth archives. Data flooded the overhead displays. Thousands of years of recorded martial refinement. Civilizations fighting without claws. Without armor. Without natural weapons. Developing systems built entirely around physics. Leverage. Timing. Pain compliance. Survival. Instructor Verith's eyes narrowed slightly. You are physically weaker than every senior present. Yes, sir. And yet you defeated them simultaneously. Ethan nodded once. Strength isn't the point. A ripple of discomfort passed through the watching cadets. One of the Carthans who had been thrown stepped forward now, pride bruised but curiosity stronger. You could have broken my arm, he said. Ethan met his gaze calmly. I didn't need to. That answer settled heavier than any insult could have. Up in the observation balcony, two figures stood in shadow. Military observers. Their insignias were subtle, but unmistakable. Galactic Defense Network. One of them replayed the footage again on a private interface. Energy conservation, the first observer muttered. Adaptive thinking, the second added. Emotional regulation under pressure. Below them, Instructor Vareth addressed the class. You trained for dominance, he said. You trained to overpower. He gestured toward Ethan. He trained for control. The difference was no longer theoretical. It was undeniable. The Academy board chimed again. A secondary notification appeared. Black belt classification confirmed. Underneath it, a smaller line. Combat tier, elite potential, pending council review. That caught everyone's attention. Council review meant planetary level evaluation. For a student. A quiet tension began to settle across the atrium. Ethan didn't celebrate. Didn't smirk. He simply bowed once toward the instructor, then toward the three seniors. Respect. Even after humiliating them. The Carthans returned the gesture slowly. The shift was subtle. But it was real. Up above, the military observer transmitted a secure message. Subject line. Human close combat doctrine, immediate analysis recommended. Attachment. 13 seconds. Instructor Vareth stepped closer to Ethan. One question, he said quietly enough that only those nearest could hear. Why didn't you display this level during preliminary evaluations? Ethan looked up at him. Because during those early evaluations, he had deliberately held back. You didn't ask, he replied. Instructor Vareth studied him for a long moment. Understanding dawned slowly. The human hadn't been underestimated by accident. He had allowed it. And that realization was more unsettling than the fight itself. A low murmur spread through the academy floor as a new voice echoed from the entrance tunnel. Deep. Confident. Unamused. So this is the human. The crowd parted instinctively. Walking into the atrium was someone larger than the three seniors combined. Broader shoulders. Heavier armor plates. Academy champion. Undefeated for 2 cycles. He stepped forward, gaze locked on Ethan. I request challenge rights. The room went still again. Instructor Vareth did not immediately respond. The champion's voice echoed across the silent hall. Let's see if 13 seconds was luck. Ethan didn't flinch. Didn't smile. Didn't hesitate. He simply adjusted the wrap on his wrist one more time. And nodded. The footage didn't stay inside the academy. It couldn't. Within 4 to 2 minutes, the 13-second engagement had been transmitted to the Galactic Combat Council under priority review status. Within 2 hours, it was flagged for species reassessment. Within 6. It was classified. Back inside the academy, the atmosphere had changed. The laughter was gone. The whispers had stopped. Cadets now watched Ethan with something new. Not mockery. Measurement. In the upper observation chamber, a closed session had begun. 3 council analysts stood before a floating combat projection of the fight. The recording replayed again. And again. And again. Pause, one analyst ordered. The frame froze at the moment before the first Carthan launched. Zoom. Muscle tension mapped in glowing red lines. Micro-movements tracked. Then a secondary overlay appeared, Ethan's positioning. He wasn't reacting to motion. He was reacting to intent. Predictive reading, the first analyst murmured. No, corrected the second. Pattern conditioning. A third screen opened. Human neurological response timing compared against galactic baseline. Reaction latency, 0.18 seconds faster than Academy average. Microadjustment reflex rate, 34% above multilimbed species mean. Pain suppression threshold, significantly elevated. The room grew quieter. Run evolutionary background. A new data stream flooded the chamber. Planet, Earth. Classification, Death World. Gravity, 1.0 standard, high. Climate volatility, extreme. Predator density, historically severe. Interspecies competition, prolonged. Intraspecies conflict, continuous across millennia. One analyst leaned back slowly. They evolved under constant threat. The other nodded. And without natural weapons. Another feed opened, human combat history. Thousands of documented martial systems. Wrestling systems dating back ancient eras. Striking disciplines refined across continents. War adaptations. Civilian adaptations. Close quarters combat developed not for spectacle, but survival. They refined physics, the first analyst said quietly. They refined necessity, corrected the second. Below the chamber, Ethan sat alone on the edge of the training platform. Not celebrating. Not stretching. Just breathing steadily. The defeated Carthan stood nearby, speaking in low tones. One of them approached him cautiously. You did not attempt to injure us. Ethan looked up. There wasn't a need. You could have broken my elbow. Yes. The Carthan stuttered him. Why didn't you? Ethan's expression remained calm. Because you're my classmates. The answer lingered. That restraint was not weakness. It was control. Across the arena floor, Instructor Vareth watched the interaction carefully. Then his wrist console chimed. Incoming transmission, Galactic Combat Council. Priority, immediate. He answered. The projection of a council representative materialized above his console. You will provide a full physiological and psychological evaluation of the human cadet, the representative said without greeting. Is there a concern? Vareth asked. There is a discrepancy. Explain. Humans were categorized as adaptable but physically moderate. The performance recorded contradicts expected combat survivability models. Vareth glanced toward Ethan. He did not overpower, the instructor said. He redirected. The council representative narrowed its eyes. Is this common among their species? Vareth paused. That, he admitted, is what you should be investigating. The next morning, the academy auditorium was packed. Not for a tournament. For a briefing. Instructor Vareth stood at the center, projection displays orbiting him. Behind him, Ethan stood silently. Cadets, Vareth began, yesterday's engagement has triggered an official species audit. A murmur rippled through the hall. The projection shifted. Earth rotated slowly in holographic form. This planet is categorized as a death world level 8. Images flashed. Storm systems. Mountain ranges. Deserts. Oceans. Predators. Human civilizations. Wars. Rebuilding. Innovation. In such environments, Vareth continued, survival is not dependent on natural armor or size. The projection shifted to combat overlays from Ethan's fight. Survival depends on adaptation. The next slide displayed a comparison chart. Carthan combat philosophy, dominance through force. Human combat philosophy, victory through efficiency. Another slide. Carthan strategy, overwhelm. Human strategy, end quickly. The room grew still. One cadet raised a clawed limb. Are you suggesting humans are superior? Vareth's gaze hardened. No. He paused. I am suggesting they were misjudged. He turned slightly toward Ethan. You were measured by muscle density. Ethan said nothing. You were measured by strike output. Still silent. You were measured by visible threat. Now Ethan finally spoke. You never measured intent. The words were not loud. But they carried. Across the back rows, the academy champion stood watching. Arms folded. Unimpressed. You make much of 13 seconds, the champion said, voice echoing across the hall. His armor plates gleamed under the lights. Speed is not dominance. The room shifted toward him instantly. The champion stepped forward into the center aisle. Close quarters is one thing, he continued. Endurance is another. His gaze locked onto Ethan. You defeated distracted seniors. The air tightened. Defeat me. A challenge. Formal. Public. Instructor Vareth did not interrupt this time. He watched Ethan carefully. Most cadets would hesitate. This was the Academy's undefeated title holder. Ethan stood slowly. No bravado. No tension. Just calm. You're larger, Ethan said evenly. Yes. You're stronger. Yes. You've trained longer. Yes. The champion's eyes narrowed slightly. And? Ethan adjusted the wrap on his wrist. The now familiar gesture. And that's fine. A faint ripple passed through the audience. The champion's lips curved in the slightest hint of a smirk. Tomorrow, he declared. Full arena. No time limit. Instructor Vareth stepped forward at last. Approved. The auditorium erupted, not in laughter this time, but anticipation. Up in orbit, council analysts requested live feed access. Species reassessment protocol escalated. A quiet note was added to the report. Human combat capacity, potentially strategic tier. Down on the arena floor, as the crowd began to disperse, one younger cadet approached Ethan hesitantly. "Are you afraid?" the cadet asked. Ethan looked toward the massive arena doors where tomorrow's fight would take place. Then back at the cadet. "Yes." The answer surprised him. "But fear isn't the problem." "What is?" Ethan's expression didn't change. Overconfidence. Across the hall, the champion was already preparing. And for the first time in Academy history, the undefeated title holder wasn't the only one being studied. The arena lights dimmed to combat mode. No training overlays. No analysis projections. Just raw space, reinforced flooring, and two fighters standing across from each other. The undefeated Academy champion rolled his shoulders once, armor plate sliding into locked position across his frame. Every movement radiated contained violence. Across from him stood Ethan Cole. No armor. No visible augmentation. Black belt tied cleanly at his waist. The crowd filled every level of the arena, but the noise had vanished. Even the multi-limbed warbreeds in the upper tiers remained motionless. This wasn't spectacle anymore. This was evaluation. Instructor Vareth stepped into the center. Engagement conditions, full arena. No time restriction. Victory by submission, incapacitation, or yield. His gaze shifted between them. Lethal force prohibited. The champion's eyes never left Ethan. "You defeated distracted seniors," he said calmly. "You will not distract me." "I know," Ethan replied. There was no tension in his voice. No bravado. Just acknowledgement. Vareth raised his arm. "Begin." The champion did not rush. That alone told Ethan everything. He advanced slowly, testing distance. Left step. Right shift. Weight centered. A probing strike snapped forward, fast for someone of his mass. Ethan slipped just outside the line. The second strike came immediately from a different angle. He blocked. The impact vibrated through his forearm like a shockwave. The strength difference was obvious. One clean grab and this would be over. The champion saw the calculation in Ethan's eyes. And pressed. A feint high. Real strike low. Ethan pivoted, barely clearing the arc of the sweeping limb. The crowd leaned forward. The champion wasn't reckless. He wasn't emotional. He was disciplined. A third strike landed partially, glancing Ethan's shoulder. Pain flared. Ethan absorbed it. Stepped back 2 paces. The champion closed distance instantly, trying to trap him against the arena edge. Smart. Cut the angles. Remove leverage space. Ethan's breathing slowed. Inhale. Exhale. The champion lunged, not wildly, but decisively. Ethan dropped his level. Slipped under the arm. Tried for a wrist capture. The champion countered immediately. His other arm clamped down, nearly catching Ethan's torso. Gasps rippled across the arena. That was close. Very close. Ethan disengaged with a sharp pivot, rolling across the reinforced floor and rising smoothly. The champion adjusted again. Now cautious. Now respecting the threat. "You are difficult," the champion admitted mid-circulation. "You are heavy," Ethan replied calmly. A flicker of something almost like amusement crossed the champion's expression. Then he attacked in combination. 3 strikes chained together with surprising fluidity. Ethan redirected the first. Barely cleared the second. The third forced him back again. The strength differential was grinding. Each impact cost him. Each block drained energy. The champion advanced relentlessly, forcing Ethan toward center. Then, a micro-error. Not dramatic. Not obvious. But real. The champion committed slightly too much weight to his rear leg while shifting for a follow-up strike. Half an inch too wide. Half a breath too slow on recovery. Ethan stepped in. Not backward. Inside. One hand trapped the wrist mid-transition. The other slid under the elbow joint. He rotated his hips sharply. The champion tried to pull back. But leverage doesn't ask permission. It demands alignment. Ethan dropped his center of gravity suddenly. The champion's balance tipped. He tried to power through. Tried to lift Ethan outright. But Ethan had already transitioned to the secondary angle. A pivot. A twist. A torque applied through joint mechanics, not muscle. The champion's knee buckled involuntarily. The entire arena gasped. The champion swung his free arm to counter. Ethan rolled under it, using the motion to tighten the lock. The champion crashed onto his side. Hard. The floor trembled. Ethan followed through instantly, shifting position to prevent escape. Knee braced. Arm extended. Shoulder isolated. The champion strained. The muscles in his armored limb bulged visibly. He tried to rip free. But the more strength he applied, the tighter the angle became. The silence in the arena was absolute. Even the air felt still. The champion froze. Testing the pressure. Understanding it. Another inch of force. And something would tear. Ethan didn't increase pressure. He didn't gloat. He didn't speak. He simply held the position. Controlled. Precise. Waiting. The champion exhaled slowly. And tapped the floor once. Twice. 3 times. Submission. Ethan released instantly and stepped back. The champion rolled to one knee, breathing heavily. Not broken. Not humiliated. But undeniably defeated. The arena remained silent. Not stunned. Not shocked. But recalibrating. Instructor Verith stepped forward. His voice carried through the chamber. Victory confirmed. The words felt heavier than they should have. The undefeated champion stood slowly. He looked at Ethan for a long moment. "You could have broken my shoulder," he said quietly. "Yes. Why didn't you?" Ethan met his gaze evenly. "Because this is training." The champion studied him. Then, slowly, he bowed. Not forced. Not symbolic. Respect. The gesture rippled outward. Rows of cadets followed. For the first time since Ethan arrived, there was no doubt in their eyes. No mockery. No disbelief. Only acknowledgement. Above them, the Galactic Combat Council replayed the final lock again and again. One analyst spoke softly. He adjusted within seconds. Another nodded. He conserved energy until error. A third added the line that would soon echo far beyond the academy walls. Humans do not overpower. They outlast mistakes. Down in the arena, Ethan adjusted the wrap on his wrist one more time. Calm. Unshaken. Instructor Verith stepped beside him. "The galaxy is watching now," the instructor said quietly. Ethan glanced up toward the observation balcony. "I figured. This changes your classification." Ethan shrugged lightly. "I'm still training tomorrow." That answer unsettled Verith more than the victory had. Because it meant something simple. The human hadn't reached his limit. He had just demonstrated control. And somewhere in orbit, a new line was added to the species audit file. Close quarters engagement with humans, high risk if overconfident. The arena lights dimmed slowly. But the silence remained. Because everyone there understood one thing now. The challenge had not exposed the human. It had exposed the flaw in everyone else's assumptions. The arena had never been this full. Not for a graduation trial. Not for a championship. Not even for inter-academy tournaments. Today, every seat was occupied. Students. Instructors. Military observers. Council analysts streaming live from orbit. The undefeated champion stood in the center of the arena floor. 8 feet tall. Lead armor plating across his shoulders. Strike force density nearly double galactic baseline. 4-2 full cycles, no cadet had lasted more than 30 seconds against him. Across from him stood Ethan Cole. No armor. No visible augmentation. Just a simple academy uniform. And a black belt tied neatly at his waist. The air felt heavier than usual. Instructor Verith stepped forward. Engagement conditions, full arena. No time limit. Victory by submission or incapacitation. Lethal force prohibited. The champion cracked his knuckles slowly. "You understand," he said, voice carrying across the chamber, "that I will not move gently." Ethan nodded once. "I understand." The instructor raised his arm. "Begin." The champion moved first. Not reckless. Not sloppy. Controlled aggression. He didn't charge like the seniors had. He advanced methodically, testing range. A heavy strike came first, fast for someone his size. Ethan slipped inside it. The second strike followed instantly. Blocked. The third forced Ethan backward 2 steps. The crowd leaned forward. This was different. The champion adapted quickly. He didn't overcommit. He adjusted. He learned. Good, Ethan thought. The champion feinted high. Swept low. Ethan barely cleared the sweep. The difference in strength was undeniable. One clean grab could end it. The champion pressed forward again. Strike. Elbow. Shoulder check. Ethan absorbed the impact partially, redirected what he could. But this wasn't three distracted seniors. This was precision wrapped in mass. The arena vibrated with each collision. Then, the champion overextended. Not by much. Half an inch too far. Half a breath too slow on recovery. Ethan stepped in. Inside the guard. One hand trapped the wrist. The other rotated the elbow. A pivot. A drop of center. A twist of balance. The champion tried to counter. But Ethan had already transitioned. The lock wasn't about strength. It was about alignment. The champion's knee buckled. A collective gasp rippled through the arena. He tried to power out. Tried to lift Ethan off the ground. But leverage doesn't care about muscle. It cares about angles. Ethan rotated again. Shifted weight. Applied pressure, not violently. Precisely. The champion hit the floor. Hard. The impact echoed. Silence followed instantly. The undefeated Academy champion lay immobilized. Not unconscious. Not broken. But completely controlled. His arm trapped. His shoulder 1 inch from dislocation. He tested resistance. Found none he could overcome. And for the first time in 2 cycles. He tapped. 3 sharp strikes against the floor. Submission. Ethan released immediately. Stepped back. Offered a hand. The champion stared at it for a long moment. Then accepted. He rose slowly. The silence in the arena wasn't shock anymore. It was realization. Instructor Verith walked to the center. His voice carried across the stunned audience. Victory confirmed. He turned to face the cadets. Today, you witnessed the flaw in our doctrine. Above them, the council feed zoomed in. Verith continued. We trained for dominance. He gestured toward the champion. We trained for endurance. Then toward Ethan. He trained for conclusion. The distinction hung heavy in the air. The council transmission feed shifted. A new classification window appeared. Human species reassessment, status updated. Old designation. Adaptive moderate. New designation. Strategic close combat species. Secondary note added. Engagement advisory, do not underestimate human restraint. The audience murmured as the implications settled. Across the galaxy, Academy training protocols began updating in real time. New mandatory study modules. Human leverage systems. Human ground control tactics. Human pain compliance structures. Even the Carthans, once dismissive, watched the display in thoughtful silence. The champion stepped forward again. He faced Ethan directly. You could have broken it, he said quietly, referencing his shoulder. Yes. Why didn't you? Ethan's answer came without hesitation. Because winning isn't destruction. The champion studied him. Then, slowly, he bowed. Not as a defeated opponent. But as an equal. The arena followed. 70 cadets bowed in unison. Above them, the council representative addressed Instructor Verith. Recommend curriculum expansion. Integrate human combat theory academy-wide. Approved, Verith replied. He turned toward Ethan. Cadet Cole. Ethan stood straight. You have been offered military fast-track placement. The arena held its breath. Ethan shook his head. I came here to learn. The response startled more than the victory had. You decline advancement? Verith asked. For now. Ethan's gaze swept across the cadets who had once laughed at him. I'm not finished. Up in orbit, the council added a final note to the species report. Humans do not escalate unnecessarily. They finish efficiently. The champion walked back to his position. The cadets began dispersing slowly, conversations hushed but intense. One younger student approached Ethan hesitantly. How did you win? The student asked. Ethan looked at the arena floor. At the place where the champion had fallen. I didn't win fast, he said calmly. I finished correctly. Above the academy, a quiet directive was transmitted to all galactic defense branches. If engaging humans in close quarters, expect adaptation within seconds. The galaxy had once measured humanity by size. By visible strength. By lack of armor. Now it measured them by something else. Control. Precision. Restraint. And perhaps most unsettling of all. Patience. As the arena lights dimmed, Instructor Verith watched Ethan walk back toward the training wing. No celebration. No arrogance. Just steady footsteps. The instructor allowed himself the faintest nod. The galaxy had feared human aggression. It had just learned to respect human discipline. And somewhere deep in the Combat Council archives, a new doctrine was written. Strength is loud. Skill is silent. Humans are both, when necessary.